Welcome to Chamber Chat. I'm John Terr, and I welcome you to our bi-weekly chat with important personalities from around town, including our local media representatives, for conversations about important issues happening in our community that impact our businesses and our economy. And today we're going to have an important prospective looking picture at our upcoming 2021 elections, including the city council race and ballot issues, with two leading journalists who follow those issues for our community. Deborah Swearingen.
That's right.
Thank you, got it right, from the Daily Camera, as well as Shay Castle, who runs her own publication, The Boulder Beat. So two leaders who follow these important issues. We're gonna have a great conversation. But before we do, just a couple of announcements from the Boulder Chamber. So first, we have an excellent upcoming business after hours, and that's on September 9th. So we're gonna have coffee, we're gonna have your morning handmade scones, and we're gonna have great networking opportunities, and that's going to be at First Congregational Church that overlooks the city of Boulder on their beautiful terrace. And it's hosted by a wonderful nonprofit organization that works with folks with different disabilities to produce products, help them develop skills that they can use out in the workforce. And that's called Mindful Works. And so we want to have the opportunity to introduce you to them, but also to enjoy some wonderful pastries, meeting some other business leaders in our community. And that is, again, on September 9th. Make sure to register online. And then second, we've already announced the honorees, but we have coming up now the time to celebrate our Women Who Light the Community Award winners. And that's going to be on September 30th. And we have two ways for you to participate. So first of all, there will be live in person joining us and getting a chance to network in person with folks. So that's a great opportunity, and I know those tickets will sell out fast. But we also know that some might be interested in participating virtually. So we have a special offer. Now until September 16, you can register for online virtual participation, easy for me to say, for $5 until September 16. So register again online and help us honor some great businesswomen leaders in our community. And then finally, and relevant to our conversation that we're going to have here with Shay and Deborah, we are hosting our biannual City Council Candidate Forum. And that's going to be on August 25 at 5 p.m. at the Jewish Community Center, the JCC. So you'll have a chance to meet all of the candidates who are vying for those 5 seats on City Council. So make sure to pay attention, get registered, and be there on August 25th. But as a preview for that public forum, we're going to have a chance to have a conversation with Deborah and with Shay about what they expect to see in the upcoming 2021 election, about council issues or council candidates, as well as some of the ballot issues. So I'm going to start with Shay. And Shay, we've already seen some of the candidates registering. I think they have until next Monday to finally get all their signatures. But so far, what are you seeing in the candidate pool in terms of the politics, in terms of their experience?
Well, this is a relatively green group. We have, I believe, 3 candidates with some prior city government experience, whether on a city board or commission, or only one incumbent running. That's Mark Wallach. So they're pretty fresh faces, and no matter how it plays out, it's going to be a relatively new council. If Mark does win his seat back, he'll be one of the more senior members with only 2 years under his belt, and everyone else will be new. 4 seats will be completely new to council. So it's not necessarily a young group by age, although it is a little bit more than in the years past, but it is a fresh-faced group.
Fresh-faced group. And I know, Deborah, you've been doing interviews with these folks. Any sort of perspective that you have on the candidates as overall the pool?
That's pretty much what I was going to say as well, that just aside from various city working groups and city boards and commissions, none of them have a ton of experience with city politics, so it definitely will be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, sure, just to see how experienced and effective they are at running and conveying their perspective on the issues. So relating it to the issues that would be up for discussion in this council election, typically Boulder has had sort of growth and slower growth as sort of the key subject. It's the key subject. But I don't know if that necessarily is the issue that's going to animate this council election. I'm wondering what issues do you see coming to the fore?
So definitely, of course, it's Boulder. Housing affordability, homelessness, that's one that I've heard every candidate mention. Transportation, climate change, those are other big ones that I've heard. Several candidates mentioned that they'll be paying attention to issues of racial justice and social justice. Those are probably some of the biggest that I've heard so far.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about the social justice as well, and encampments in particular has come up. Any sort of issues that you see being of most critical importance that may divide the candidates this year?
I do think we're going to divide along issues of homelessness and or public safety. You see a group of candidates more as the public safety candidates, which typically means support for police. Not that the other candidates don't support police, they just have a different way of supporting police, which is maybe their suggestions are, let's have the police do less. Let's maybe do some mental health professionals taking some cases and things like that. And I do think it's interesting to notice that housing, of course, always a perennial issue here, and there's been some movement. I think we saw in 2019 social issues being a bigger role than some people anticipated, and that's continued. But even on the housing issue, even the more slow growth candidates are now saying we have to build housing. It's just more along like where we build it, transportation corridors, basically, not in the neighborhoods. And even in 2019, we weren't really seeing that. We were still seeing candidates say we can't do anything about this. It's a national problem, which it is. But so that for me has been a shift that was noticeable this year.
Interesting. Well, a lot of times you can tell where council candidates are landing on the issues by some of the endorsements and the supporters that they have collected. And I'm wondering if you've seen any alignments this time that might suggest which candidates might be supported on what particular issues by who supporting them.
Well, obviously the endorsements aren't all out yet, but if you look at who certified the candidates when they applied to be candidates, you can see a lot of familiar names. The endorsements are out for the Boulder Coalition, which is, Better Boulder, Open Boulder, United Campus Workers, Boulder Progressives, and then the Bedrooms Are for People folks with their new group, Boulder is for People. And then the candidates who were endorsed by Bob Yates, they also had a lot of the traditional slow growth, plan folks signed their petition to certify. And then some new names. So we've seen some involvement from, the Highland City Club, which hosted a panel on homelessness earlier this year. And some of those same names were on the endorsement list for those candidates, the certification list for those candidates.
Interesting crossover alignments then. Anything that you are seeing from the endorsements that have already been announced?
Not too many from the ones that have already been announced. I guess I'm still waiting to see what Plan Boulder will do. Of course, I haven't seen an official list of candidates from them, so that's one that I'll be for sure looking out for in the weeks to come.
Yeah, sure. Well, let me switch it from the candidates to some of the election issues. And a number of ballot issues are going to be decided this election. And I wonder what ones might be most interesting to you from a public policy or political perspective.
Sure, so certainly I'll be following them all, but I think the CU South Initiative, just because of the implications that it could have. The City Council is set to vote on the annexation agreement in September, and so then the CU South Initiative will happen obviously during the election in November. So to see how that might affect Council's decision in September and what implications that might have on that process, I think that's one of the big ones that I'll be watching out for, that I'm interested in.
Certainly is. We are going to be following it very closely from the Boulder Chamber perspective. And then I just wonder from your perspective, Shay, any other ballot issues that you think are of particular note that you're following that you might advise the viewers to pay attention to?
Well, obviously, like Deborah, I'm following them all, writing about them all. The tax extension is one to be aware of. That's to pay for some infrastructure projects that the city is woefully behind on. And then, of course, Bedrooms Are for People, which is to amend the occupancy limits. That's, I think, among the political class, it's super interesting and important and controversial, but I think among the wider population, I don't know that that's the case. I think we've seen strong support for that in early surveying and just in the sheer number of volunteers and signatures they've been able to get. So I think it's one of those cases where if you're in, it's a big deal to you, but if you're out, it is what it is. And I honestly feel that way about a lot of the ballot initiatives this year. They're pretty, to me, I don't know, standard, and I think anyone who's reasonably educated will be able to look at them and make a call without too much agita.
Interesting. Okay, agita. I love
Yeah.
that. Because I get that from time to time. Certain ballot issues.
Good agita.
You know, it is interesting because there are these pockets of individuals and neighborhoods that are particularly attuned to some of these issues. I know that there's also candidate groups that are going to be aligning. I'm just wondering, as somebody who's observed city politics for some time, any advice you have for these folks who are promoters of ballot issues, of candidates, or for the candidates themselves as they prepare to run?
Well, I always say know the budget, and you know, at this point I've interviewed more than half the candidates, and I'm pleasantly surprised at the level of budget knowledge. Like, thank you Boulder, you finally impressed me. There's at least a general awareness. Most people have read the budget, they know where our money comes from, where it's going, which to me is a huge deal. For me, the candidates, you know, the advice you get from your PR team is going to be different than you get from journalists. It's just, if you have something that you're going to have to answer to, you're going to have to answer to it. You can't avoid it. So just be honest and engaging. I don't know what else to say except, like, you're going to be asked tough questions. These are tough issues, and you have to be prepared and know your stuff, which I think in this particular group, I have spoken with everyone and they all seem reasonably well informed and engaged, which is, to me, the bare minimum for public service. So I am pleased so far with the group of candidates.
Well, it's great, counsel, and in particular the focus on the budget, but then just generally speaking what you know directly. Any counsel from you, folks who are going to be interviewed by you during the election, advice, counsel?
Yeah, answer my calls.
Very
Get back
good.
to me.
Good.
Definitely that.
Cool. I try to do that myself.
Yes,
Deborah, so
you do.
You're generous. And so then the last question I just have for both of you. So we see that only one of the incumbents, because all 5 seats that are up, they could have run. Mayor Weaver, et cetera. Mark Wallach is the only incumbent running. So I just wonder, just as you look at the work of City Council and that what these candidates may be preparing for, what does it tell you about the job of City Council?
I think it just speaks to how challenging it is. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. There's a lot of pressure. Added on top of that, we've had a pandemic, which has caused financial challenges, and people have died, and people have been sick. They just had lots of challenges that go beyond the normal year. So I think it really speaks to how challenging it is for them.
And I know it has been a difficult year. I'm going to speak with them about just the not being able to be out with the citizens and just the online stuff for hours and hours. Any thought and perspective from your end, Shay?
I agree with Deborah in regards to the pandemic and, you know, the King Super shooting. Like, that takes an emotional toll on a community, and I think that's reflected not only by the only one incumbent running, but the fact that this is a really small pool of candidates. Only 9 candidates certified so far. Last year was 15. I think the year before that was, you know, around that same number. So, or the time before that. People are really stressed out. They're really overwhelmed. The national news is overwhelming. The international news is overwhelming. We've been through a lot in this community. I think people tend to discount how traumatic that is, and you just sometimes can't take on anymore. And as in terms of the incumbents, it's just a really tough job. You know, I've spoken to them all pretty regularly, and even some candidates who feel a lot of political pressure to, you know, vote certain ways, and to their credit, they don't. They tend to vote how they want to vote independently, which I really respect. But that doesn't mean there's not pressure. You know, I've talked to people who have lost friends, they've said, over their votes, and it's just a really tough crowd in Boulder. People are really exacting, which is as it should be. We should be holding our officials accountable. It's just for a very demanding job and a not well-paid job, it's really tricky. And I think that's also interesting about the candidate pool this year is how many of them are working. There's only 2 retired people that are running.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of, not necessarily working class, but they are working folks.
Sure.
And so, I've heard a lot from them as well, like, we need to streamline, we need to do less with council, focus more on these few big issues, which is new too. So, I just think people are generally tired. I know
Gotcha.
I am, so.
Burnt out.
Well, speaking of just the hard work, I will say this, that we so appreciate the hard work that you, Deborah, and Shay do on our behalf. I mean, this helps us to understand the issues, the candidates that are in front of us. And I know from talking to both of you that it's not easy. It's challenging work, and just let alone covering the issues that are in front of us. So I thank you guys both for being with us on Chamber Chat and for sharing this prospective on the election. And maybe I can encourage you to come back afterwards and say, what the hell happened? But thank you both for being with us. And I thank our audience for joining us on this Chamber Chat. Just a reminder, we are going to hear from the candidates themselves directly at the Boulder Chamber Candidate Forum. That is on August 25th at 5 o'clock at the JCC. So make sure to register online. And we'll see you next time on Chamber Chat.